More than 51 million retired workers take home a benefit check that averages about $1,900 a month. And I know this sounds modest, but it's foundational for many people. There are so many people whose sole retirement is Social Security. Since 2002, the national pollster Gallup has conducted an annual survey to gauge Social Security income and just looking at the importance of it to help individuals make ends meet. And for the last 2 decades, between 80 and 90% of the respondents have noted that it counts for either a major part of their retirement, that's 59%, or a minor part, 29%. Out of that 59%, studies show that between 40 and 50% of those people, that's their sole income. But then there are some that have maybe a small pension, which still is probably insignificant. So for a lot of people, Social Security is critical. Put another way, basically nearly 9 out of the 10 retired workers would struggle to cover expenses if Social Security wasn't there. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of Denise's question. Can you share thoughts and insight on tariffs, immigration, and Social Security, and how it could impact me and my family? Such a great question, and a question many of our Millionaire Insider community members have. So it's timely. Last week, we dove into the first of 2 parts, episode 87, Tariffs, Immigration, and Your Finances. And I really encourage you to listen to it. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/87 to access it. The key here, my friends, is what do you need to do as far as creating a plan and protecting your family based on some of the potentials that are coming down from the new administration. And again, there are no guarantees on what's going to happen. There are many experts who have opinions and are shedding light on the what-if scenarios, including impacts on tariffs, immigration, inflation, Social Security, and retirement. And because it's such a big topic, I don't like to go over about 20, 25 minutes. Last episode was a lot longer because it's just all-encompassing, and I want you to understand it so you can be watching what happens and making decisions. You know, the most important thing is you got to understand what's proposed, understand what things are, and then start looking at the different scenarios so that you can get a gauge on what you need to do depending on what happens. And more importantly, start creating a plan now so that you're prepared regardless of what happens. The ultimate goal for both of these episodes is to help you make the best decision so that you can create a secure financial future for you and your family. So please stay tuned. You can access our free financial checkup at themillionaireinsider.com/FC. If you need more help on your next best step to secure your financial future and create a retirement you love, you're going to love this checkup because it's going to give you insight on what you should do to make sure your financial house is in order. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/FC. Today's free checklist is a retirement planning checklist. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. One of the biggest concerns I have with a lot of the potential plans that could come into play are the economic cuts that are going to occur with government programs, and that includes Social Security and Medicare. And specifically with Social Security and Medicare, it's more the lack of funding or taking money from it. For that reason, I think it's imperative that you create your own retirement plan. If the experts are wrong, you're going to win because you're going to have more money and you can either use it for your retirement or for your emergency reserve or whatever else you need. There is nothing fun about running out of money, worrying about money, or not having enough money in retirement. So take the time to create a plan and make your financial future and retirement a priority. Again, you can get the checklist at themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/88. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaires.com. All information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement, planning, or healthcare advice. Now, the first thing I just want to say is that no politician wanting to get elected is ever going to tell you they're going to touch Social Security or Medicare. I mean, it would be death on arrival. So you got to understand that no one's ever going to say that. So you've got to look a little deeper. Now, if you review President-elect Trump's plan, he didn't say, in fact, he said, I won't touch Social Security. But what he did say is he's going to stop taxing it. Now, on the surface, that sounds great, especially for wealthy people. What is missing is the fact of how much that funds Social Security and Medicare. And even my own CPA didn't know this. When I started talking to her about it, I'm like, do you know how much money is going to be lost? She was shocked. But this is a perfect example of why looking deeper to understand proposals and, more importantly, how they can impact you and your family. People say, oh, I'm not planning on Social Security. Well, I'm telling you, the vast majority of Americans need it. And it's something that if it's not there, you better have a plan, because it's kind of like, I'm not going to cuss, but it's kind of like FAFO. And I didn't even know what it meant, so I searched it up. I will say this much, and I'm not going to cuss on this because you could have your kids in the car. This is a perfect example when you don't pay attention and then something comes down the pipeline. You got to pay attention, my friends, or it could be a disaster for you and your family in the future as well as in retirement. More than 51 million retired workers take home a benefit check that averages about $1,900 a month. And I know this sounds modest, but it's foundational for many people. It's amazing how many people I know that are completely reliant on Social Security, just from what I do as an advisor, meaning my charity work, as well as even working with advisors who are now retired. There are so many people whose sole retirement is Social Security. Since 2002, the national pollster Gallop has conducted an annual survey to gauge Social Security income and just looking at the importance of it to help individuals make ends meet. And for the last 2 decades, between 80 and 90% of the respondents have noted that it counts for either a major part of their retirement, that's 59%, or a minor part, 29%. Out of that 59%, studies show that between 40 and 50% of those people, that's their sole income. But then there are some that have maybe a small pension, which still is probably insignificant. So for a lot of people, Social Security is critical. The latest study showed that 88% shared that Social Security was either major or minor. Put another way, basically nearly 9 out of the 10 retired workers would struggle to cover expenses if Social Security wasn't there. I mean, think about that, my friends. That is crazy. The funding deficit has been growing over the years, and for the last 4 decades, it's been increasing, and right now it sits at about $23.2 trillion as of 2024. As of November of this year, the Social Security program faces significant challenges. The Old Age and Survivors Insurance, which is OASI Trust Fund, is projected to be depleted in its reserves by 2034. At that point, ongoing income would cover approximately 79% of the scheduled benefits, leading to a potential 21% reduction in benefits to beneficiaries if corrective measures aren't taken. Right now, Social Security increases by COLA, which is the cost of living. And what they're saying will happen is that there will be no increases for inflation. So when your food and your gas and your eggs go up, you won't get more money. Social Security generates over 91% of its income from payroll taxes. Part of the issue that's a concern is the discussion of not taxing income as well as not taxing like tips or wages. So Trump has proposed eliminating federal taxes on Social Security benefits, which many retirees think is great because they don't understand what that means. He said, and I quote, seniors should not pay tax on Social Security because they've already paid it. He basically said, this is a double taxation, and I'm promising no taxes on Social Security benefits. And the message was love. People were loving it. In fact, even people that didn't support him thought this is great. Now, obviously, this is impacting people that have money because people who don't have money are not being taxed because they're not making money. They're not falling into those brackets. But the issue is, my friends, it could be a problem. Some of the other factors you need to look at is discussions about eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, as well as tariffs, the 60% tariff on China goods and 20% on other countries. Why do these three issues matter? Ending the tax on tips and overtime would dramatically reduce the payroll tax income, which goes and funds Social Security and Medicare. Higher tariffs will lead to higher cost of living adjustments. And if the fund, Social Security and or Medicare, is depleted, they're not going to have money to keep pace with inflation. And that, again, is going to have a negative impact. And then strengthening the U.S. border would remove undocumented workers. Reports show that they get anywhere between $25 to $95 billion of money from them. So there are a lot of factors you got to be paying attention to that can have a dramatic impact on your financial future and retirement. One of the major groups that studies this, which is the Center for Responsible Federal Budget, studied the median projection of Trump's core proposals and what that would do. And what they found is that it would expand Social Security's cash deficit by about $2.25 trillion over 10 years. So basically what they're saying, now it's interesting because I've seen a couple different reports. They are saying that it would deplete the fund 3 years earlier. So instead of 2034, it would be 2030 or 2031. I thought it was interesting that this article had to point out that the Center for Responsible Federal Budget is a right-leaning organization. They found that an end to taxes on Social Security would result in a $1.6 trillion reduction in tax revenues for both Social Security and Medicare. As a result, both programs would run out of money. Some of the projections say within 6 to 8 years. Some of the things that could happen, they can raise the age in which you start getting Social Security. They can lower the amount you get. They can stop cost of living increases. So there are a variety of different things they can do. All of those point to one thing. You've got to start taking your financial future, your retirement into your own hands. It's very unlikely that this scenario is going to look great. Now, what could happen is for the next 4 years, they deplete it and it's potentially catastrophic. And then we get a different administration in the White House and they decide to make it up. Well, if that happens, then we're going to be paying more in taxes. The bottom line, my friends, is that we've got to start really looking what we can do to get our retirement into our own hands. And if we end up having this money from the government that we've paid into, I might add, we'll be in a much better position to be okay financially. Again, it's something to really be aware of. Just to kind of let you know, as far as the taxing of the benefits, most recipients, about 60%, do not pay tax on their benefits because they don't earn money. But in 1984, Reagan put a tax on saying if you earned a certain amount, 50% of those benefits would be taxed. And then Clinton added on an additional 35%, bringing it to 85%. No one's talking about the deficit. And that is one thing that absolutely shocks me. The last time our budget was balanced and we didn't have a deficit issue was under Clinton. My opinion is that, especially if you have a trifecta where you have the House, Senate, and President being Republicans, I would think the number one conversation would be the deficit. But that's not the case. And if you look at the last 4 years of Trump, the deficit increased under him in 4 years, almost what Obama did in 8 years. Now, a lot of people say it was from the pandemic, which originally I believe, but it was not. He increased it a lot even before then. So it doesn't appear that there's a lot of concern about the deficit. Now, why does that matter to you? Well, as our deficit keeps increasing, at some point, we've got to pay this money back. It's kind of like if you overdraw your checking account. You can get away with it for a while. You can pay the interest for a while, but at some point it catches up. And how it catches up with us is we're going to have increases in taxes. So there's no free lunch. Yeah, you might get a deferred lunch. You might have to wait for your lunch, but at some time you're going to have to pay back that lunch. So you might be saying, this is great. I'm not paying anything. I have all this money, but at some point you're going to have to. Something, again, just to be aware of and to watch. The benefit of them not taxing Social Security is that those of us who have money would have more money in our pocket. The downside is it's going to deplete the fund sooner. There's going to be insolvency a lot quicker than if they fund it. Every report I've read is that the cut on taxes to Social Security will help affluent retirees. It's not going to help people who don't have money. The bottom line is those who can afford to be comfortably retired and are not relying on Social Security are just going to be better off. The bottom line is that companies have replaced pensions with 401ks, putting the burden on the workers to fund their retirement. These potential changes could reduce or eliminate a lot of your benefit from Social Security. While my peers and I don't believe that Congress or the president is going to eliminate Social Security or Medicare, it's more likely that they're either going to reduce the benefit, not increase it for cost of living, or make some other type of change where it's just reduced, either by you get it later, you get less, it's not increasing or keeping pace with inflation. So as some of you can imagine, if you're getting $2,000 a month and prices are going up by 7%, 6.9, which I think was the height of the pandemic, that's like 7%. So you're talking about on a $2,000 benefit, losing about $140 a month, which equates to about $1,680 a year. It adds up. So something you've got to pay attention to. And the other issue just to be aware of is that future administrations, if they're concerned about Social Security and if that is something that the American people, retirees, put pressure on, they're going to have to dramatically increase taxes to fund a gap. So there's problems. No matter how you look at it, there are issues. Something's going to probably give. And so you just got to be prepared for it. The main thing I want you to do, my friends, is be prepared for it. And now is the time to start. Removing your employer, the government, or anyone else as a plan for your retirement, in my opinion, is probably the smartest move you can make. For this reason, I strongly recommend that you create a plan for your retirement. That's where you start. You won't be upset you did. If that means getting another job, a part-time job, spending less, combination of all the above, that is the key. So let's talk about inflation. Another major factor in your retirement is inflation. When prices, including cost of labor and production, increase, so does inflation. Immigration and tariffs are likely going to increase inflation, as well as the cost of goods are going to increase, which will cost more, meaning the amount of money you have for every dollar you have is worth less. It decreases in times of inflation. So what ends up happening is you have to pay more for these products, but you have less money to pay for them. That's the impact of inflation. Now, most of the economic reports I read have been that the stock market should continue to increase under Trump's administration, but we're going to also see very high inflation. That said, there's a lot of people who feel that with tariffs and immigration, it could really cause problems in the stock market. So the bottom line is, there's no surefire direction or path what's going to happen. And that's why we have to be paying attention to all these things, because they're going to dramatically impact us. Price gouging is another issue. As costs to make goods and labor dropped after COVID, many companies did not pass those on to the consumer. Instead, they passed it on to those of us who own stock and already have money, and we became wealthier. I don't agree with this. I think that we can make money and still make it affordable where people can buy the essentials they need to support their family. And I can pretty much guarantee that if some of us sat down and created a plan, we could create a pretty good one. It might not be perfect, but it doesn't have to be where the rich just keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. I mean, that is just a disaster. As I've said before, if you own stock in the company, it's been heaven. But if you have to pay for the products of those companies, it's been a nightmare. And I have an issue with this. I'd like to see a measure in place where there's a give and take, and it's not just about benefiting the wealthy. But we are in unprecedented territory, and there are many uncertainties. So, my friends, stay tuned and pay attention. Let's recap on Social Security, inflation, and your retirement. Number one, create a plan for your retirement. Like it or not, more of the burden of retirement is going to be on you. By taking ownership of your future, it's something you'll never regret. If you don't need it, you're going to have more money. If you do need it, you're going to be so glad you took the time to create a plan and executed it. Save as much money as you can. If Social Security reductions don't become a reality, you're going to have more money in retirement. And again, that is a great problem to have. You want to replace Social Security with guaranteed income. Options include pensions, target funds, or my favorite, which is guaranteed lifetime income through an annuity. I'll link to an episode in the show notes where I discuss this more in depth. Purchase essentials and products now that could be impacted by tariffs and immigration reform. Become conscious of where you're spending your money and focus on needs and limit those wants until we have a better idea of what's going on. That is probably the smartest advice I can give you. By simply paying attention to what's going on, you're going to be so much further ahead. And one of the things that I just see happening so much, and it's on both sides, is that if the person you want to get elected gets elected, you're like, great. And then you kind of go to sleep and ignore it. The person you didn't want, maybe you pay more attention. My friends, you got to be paying attention regardless of who's elected. And you got to be paying attention enough to the point where you can be making decisions on what is best for you and your family. Taking more of the responsibility of your retirement, paying more attention is something you're never going to regret. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did researching it. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.